Thank you very much, Asti. Excellencies, distinguished guests, a very warm welcome on this afternoon in Jakarta in Southeast Asia. We are joined by some people in the UK, so a very good morning to you. This is the launching of the International Business Confidence Index 2020, a piece of work that's been managed by BritCham in partnership with EuroCham and in association with the EIBN and CastleAsia. We're delighted once again to have the international integrity of Nielsen as our market research partner. You're here today because you very, very kindly cooperated and took the time to complete the survey when it was sent out. So thank you very much for that. What you've enabled us to do is to be able to collate a very, very relevant piece of work. Once again, Asti has mentioned, but I would just like to restate the support of sponsors, which is absolutely crucial to all chambers. And they are Altilium, BNP Paribas, BUPA, Danone, HSBC, Inke Maris Associates, Ipsotek, Mandate Executive Search, Prudential Life Assurance, Steinberg Protocol, and the TMF Group. Really, it's not for me to preempt anything that's going to be said by either of the ambassadors, the UK and the EU ambassadors, or of the respective chairs of the two chambers, or of our panel. So with that, I would like to defer to some welcoming words from HMA Owen Jenkins, British Ambassador to Indonesia and Timor Leste.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. And thank you to all of my fellow speakers and panelists at this event today on the Business Confidence Index, which, as you've said, Chris, is something which BritCham is managing, but only is possible because of the collaboration and support of all of those actors that you've mentioned. So EuroCham as a key partner, but also in particular all the supporters and sponsors of this important index. And thank you from me too for all of the work that's gone into this. This is a piece of work which I think BritCham has been supporting has been managing for the last 7 years. And I think that one of the values of this piece of work is that it gives us a consistent view over time of the way in which business is viewing the environment in Indonesia and how they perceive their businesses going forward. And the work that's been done by all involved to give us that baseline, but also to consistently expand the index, I think has been extremely valuable to make sure that it's got an international flavor, that it covers the expectations of the policy framework and government activity, but also the business environment itself and room for future developments. And one of the values of the index, I think, is that it is very inclusive of British and European businesses who are already domiciled and already fully invested in Indonesia, and so have a really powerful view of the market. This year's, of course, was deferred slightly because of the COVID-19 epidemic, to allow the chambers and businesses to have a better idea of the impact of COVID-related issues, because this year has been, I think, for all of us, an odd one, and the COVID impact will skew the results. That said, some of the results, and I don't want to preempt too much, but I think some of the results are hardly surprising, that there is overall a more negative view of the market, and that is largely down to the impacts of COVID-19 on a whole range of factors. I think if that's all that the index told us, we wouldn't be that surprised. But I think the insight that it gives us into the factors which underpin that, and also the attitudes and confidence in the government's approach, I think is extremely valuable. And there are also some encouraging aspects in the report. the fact that nearly half of the respondents still have plans to invest in Indonesia over the next couple of years, and again that more than 2/3 have already adapted their new investments to focus on the digital space. And I think this shows us the direction of the future, the way in which businesses will adapt to our new COVID world through doing more of their activity online, more through digital services and outreach. The index also provides invaluable input into my embassy's work in this area, and the timely and useful information it provides will help us to step up our own plans to support British businesses as they work to succeed in Indonesia. Of particular relevance this year is the joint trade review, which we're very pleased to be undertaking together with the Indonesian government. And this will identify the sectors where both sides want to increase trade and investment, whether that's energy, digital services, education, or goods. And we want to work very closely with business as we develop that review, including through the insights that the index gives us. And the focus on digital, which is there in the index, reflects very well some work that we're doing in the embassy to increase our own resource in such areas so that we can focus properly on those areas which are seen by business as growth. So finally, my heartfelt congratulations to BritCham, to EuroCham, and to all of those involved in this year's index for completing the survey under very difficult circumstances and publishing its results in such a user-friendly way. The British Embassy, and in particular the team from the Department for International Trade, will continue to work in very close partnership with BritCham to realise the aspirations which British business have to further boost trade and investment and partnership with Indonesia and to work successfully in this market. And I'd urge all companies, please do get in touch with us if there's anything we can do to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Owen Jenkins, British Ambassador to Indonesia and Timor-Leste. Thank you for those welcoming words, and also in particular for underlining the relevance of this piece of work, perhaps particularly at this time. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ms. Corine Tapp, Chair of EuroCham, and Corine will say a few words of welcome on behalf of the Chambers of Commerce that have been involved in this collaboration. Corine.
Thank you, Chris, and yours Excellencies Vincent Pickett, European Union Ambassador to Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam, Owen Jenkins, United Kingdom's Ambassador to Indonesia and Timor-Leste, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, semangat pagi, salam sejahtera. Good afternoon and welcome to the formal presentation of the International Business Confidence Index, BCI, in 2020, which already was mentioned is a little bit later than normally due to the the unprecedented COVID pandemic. It is the 8th edition of this BCI that the European Chamber of Commerce in Indonesia has partnered with the British Chamber of Commerce in Indonesia, the BritCham. And we believe as chambers that represents the interests of business entities with a firm presence and knowledge of doing business in Indonesia. It adds value to have visibility as to the perception and viewpoint of fellow businesses as represented by the respondents of the BCI survey as to the state of confidence of doing business here. By doing so, we as a policy advocacy platform can clearly identify areas that need to be maintained as well as those that need to be reinforced so as to enhance competitiveness and the ease of doing business in Indonesia. On our part, EuroCham has been in Indonesia for nearly 2 decades now. We present directly 200 European companies that are active in Indonesia, but through our 8 bilateral trade chambers from the UK, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, France, and the Scandinavian countries. Together, we represent more than 1,500 European companies in Indonesia. EuroCham serves as a policy advocacy platform with a single unified voice for European businesses with a common objective to improve competitiveness and the ease of doing business in Indonesia. Our efforts are carried out through the various working groups that cover multiple sectors, as well as actively provide input on policy as a dialogue partner for the government and other chambers and stakeholders. The global pandemic has proved to be challenging this year for all our members, yet we feel it serves in the best interest of both Indonesia and European businesses to seek and support efforts to accelerate investment and trade that improves competitiveness and benefits Indonesia's economic recovery and growth, and do that also in a sustainable way. BUCI represents the views of the corporate members of participating chambers about doing business in Indonesia, the regulation in Indonesia in relation to potential economic reform, the investment climate and future investment plans. The findings represent the opportunities and challenges of doing business in Indonesia. It reflects the regulatory environment, shares sentiment on economic reform and outlook, and could indicate the future investment plans of EU business already doing business in Indonesia. Without further ado, let us hear the highlights of this year's survey and look forward to the positive feedback and constructive dialogue towards these findings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Corine Tapp, Chair of EuroCham, in particular for articulating the importance of the various chambers collaborating and working together in support of our host country, Indonesia, and of course, our home countries as well. It now gives me great pleasure to invite Nick Holder, who is the acting chairman of BritCham and also the BritCham representative on the board of EuroCham, to formally launch and present the findings of the International Business Confidence Index 2020. Nick Holder.
Thanks very much, Chris. Thanks very much to all of our speakers so far, and to welcome everybody in the audience. Great to have you all here, and thanks very much for all your participation in preparing the survey. I'm very lucky. This is the third time I've presented the survey, so as the ambassador was saying, you start to see some trends in the data over time as well, and it's really interesting to see how they develop. Let's move on now to a little bit of detail on the survey. So if we go to the first slide, we have a little bit of information about the survey itself, and there's a couple of things maybe to highlight on this slide. So first one is 108 respondents. That's a big increase on last year, and I think when Chris and I were discussing it the other day, we thought this was the highest number of respondents that we've had for the survey, which is really positive. It shows the engagement and the interest in this subject matter. I think the other things I'd highlight on this page, it's an online survey. It's quite easy to complete. It's quite comprehensive though, with a range of questions. It was conducted mostly in September, a little bit into October. So one of the themes that we'll see maybe is that the passing of the omnibus law hasn't been reflected yet in some of the responses. Some of the responses look forward to the omnibus law, but they don't directly respond to the news that it's been passed. If you look at the bottom, you can see there's a very wide range of companies that are participating. No one sector particularly dominates. Definitely services, energy and natural resources, financial services having a slightly larger impact on the number of responses. Okay, if we go forward 2 slides onto the outlook, this is a very interesting slide because it shows a very dramatic change from what was presented last year. So the question here is, how would you describe the outlook on your business in Indonesia? So it's asking very directly, what do the respondents think is going to happen to their business in Indonesia? And you can see that there is a very significant increase, perhaps not surprisingly, but there is a significant increase in negative outlook for Indonesia. So when we presented these slides last year, 9 out of 10 of the respondents had either a positive view, nearly 2/3 had a positive view, or a neutral view. Now it's a very even split between the 3 options. So they're in fact the largest proportion, the plurality is for a negative outlook, whereas before it was a very small proportion of the total, 11%, it's now 36%. You can see a small increase in neutral, and all of that coming from the people with positive outlook. People have a little bit of trepidation as they were filling out this survey about what's going to happen to their businesses. Okay, if we go to the next slide, you can see that there are some differences between the business sectors here. We've added two new sectors here, which is e-commerce and pharmaceutical, and thank goodness that we did, because you can see that they're the two sectors that have a positive feeling for their growth opportunities in Indonesia. You can see that the business segments that have featured before and have had a higher, more positive outlook a year ago are all showing declines. So there seems to be a definite move in the segments of the Indonesian economy that are seen as exciting and having high prospects. I guess digital particularly not a great surprise to us, given the move online that we've seen in these COVID times. Okay, if we go to the next slide, you can see that there's less optimism about companies' prospects across the board. So if you see they look at their revenue, if they look at their profit, they look at their investments, and they look at their workforce, they're all showing declines year on year compared to 2019. One interesting point about this slide I thought was the particularly large impact on workforce. So people are feeling nervous. It's not giving them the confidence that they need to retain and grow their workforces. Even a bigger hit there than we're seeing on investments. And interestingly, the profits are a little bit more robust. So I'm suspecting there's some cost cutting going on in Indonesian businesses at the moment. And we'll come back to that point on workforce in a few more slides' time as we go through the deck. Okay, we go to the next slide. This looks at geographical expansion plans, and this is again very different from what we've seen last year. And the big change here you can see is on Kalimantan. Very big difference there in terms of what's going on in Kalimantan. The proportion of people who are thinking of investing in Kalimantan has now increased to 35% of people thinking they're having an expansion there. It's very hard to figure out what that could be other than the impact of the new capital coming in and people thinking, yes, let's follow, maybe there's some investment opportunities there. If you look at other segments of the Indonesia, other provinces, you can see very little interest perhaps in expansion or relative to last year. You can see the West Java, particularly in Central Java, which were key areas for expansion in previous years, they've essentially flattened expectations compared to last year. Kalimantan is where the action with in Indonesia in 2020, 2021. Okay, we go to the next slide. We're looking at the macroeconomic factors that affect Indonesia. And you can see here we're looking at the proportion of the respondents who are feeling positive or very positive. And you can see that the proportions right across the board have come down, red negatives in each category: fiscal, political environment, regulatory and labour policy. But it's investment climate that's taken the real hit. You can see, whereas nearly half of the respondents in previous 2 years have been feeling positive, that number has now reduced 26%. So it's halved compared to the levels we've seen in previous years. Okay. If we go on to the next slide, I don't know if this is good news or bad news for Indonesian bureaucrats, but they're only in second place. You can see the biggest impact here relates to COVID. So COVID is seen, unsurprisingly, as the biggest single negative impact. It's seen as happening for the next 12 months. So an interesting sense there about what is, what the timelines are for introducing a vaccine and implementing measures that control the spread of COVID in Indonesia. But after that, there's a number of other negatives which are actually equally significant to businesses. So it's not the case that it's just COVID that's worrying people. Bureaucracy, has, if you like, a resurgence compared to prior years. the regulatory environment, corruption, and labour policy, all concerns for businesses that are operating in Indonesia, all areas where they'd like to see improvements. If we go to the next slide. So this is just looking ahead, a very sort of similar view, perhaps slightly different in that the impacts on most of the factors are expected to improve in the next year. So if you're looking for some good news, you can see that the relative impact looking ahead is slightly less than the impact that people are experiencing now, with the exception of COVID. So coming back to that point about how quickly do businesses think that COVID will be addressed? On the other hand, the factors that are more under human control, people are feeling optimistic and expecting them to improve. Okay, if we go on to the next slide. So this is where I wanted to talk a little bit more about people and the impact on people dimensions coming through in this survey. So you can see there's some negatives and some positives here. The negatives, continued concerns around availability of talent. This always comes up in surveys. It always comes up as a significant issue for Indonesia. As businesses want to grow, they want to find skilled people, they want to find professional people, and they are hard to come by in Indonesia. Absolutely imperative that there's a strong flow of well-trained professional technical resources here in Indonesia. The second category, where again it's down a little bit, is in relation to the employment of expats. Again, this is a perennial favourite. It's an issue that businesses always raise when they have an opportunity. Foreign businesses, when they invest in Indonesia, like to bring in a small number of usually highly paid senior executives to manage and oversee their investments, and generally Indonesia is seen as a harder market in which to do that than its Southeast Asian peers. If you look on the right though, there are two categories here where there's seen as improvement compared to last year. And I don't know if these are good news for our companies, maybe they're less good news for us as employees and for our teams. Because you can see here that two of the other issues that come, I think, directly from that availability, that scarcity of talent, play out here, and are maybe being impacted by COVID. So people are expecting less staff turnover. I think people will be more reluctant to move jobs if they already have a good, safe job. And also people are expecting a lower rate of pay increase, if any pay increase, based on the conversations I've had in the coming year ahead, again, as a direct result of COVID, the impact that's had on the Indonesian economy and the rate of growth, the ability for skilled resource to move around and negotiate good pay rises as they move around. So it's a set of mixed messages from a company perspective here. And again, it suggests that staff in Indonesia may be in a slightly weaker negotiating position looking forward for the near term because of COVID, but I think that's very unlikely to continue in the long term because of the growth prospects of the economy. Okay, if we want to move on to the next slide. This is a very interesting slide, this one, because it shows that in spite of the negatives and the concerns that have been flagged on the previous slide, in spite of the outlook that people see for their companies for the next 12 months turning to negative, that still more than half of the international businesses that took part in this survey are expecting to increase their investments, or they're looking to expand their workforce. And that's evidence of the value that multinational companies can bring to Indonesia and other similar markets. They can bring a long-term perspective, and they can bring resources, and they can bring employment. So notwithstanding what we've seen on the previous slide, there's some very good news here about the longer-term prospects for the Indonesian economy. Okay, if we go on to the next slide. This spells out in a bit more detail about investments and whether people are considering major investments in the next 2 years. Again, you can see people are making decisions here. A year ago, maybe they were sitting on the fence and reluctant to make decisions. And given all that disruption of COVID, the surprising thing is that more people are getting off the fence in favor of making investments than are deciding to say, no, we're going to stay where we are. So big European, British businesses are looking more and more to invest in Indonesia based on these survey results. Okay, if we go to the next slide. What we're going to talk about now is government policy. We've seen that the businesses in the survey are looking to make investments. You know, how's the government doing to encourage them? What can it do more of? How can it help in terms of creating a benign investment climate? And you can see here, these are the main categories we've surveyed before, which are the areas that people are expecting to improve. And generally, quite a few people are expecting improvements coming forward, but there's some, you know, maybe a reduction in the rate of improvement that's expected. So you can see less confidence about consultation with business. People are expecting consultation with business, but not the same confidence that they had a year ago. You can see some of the coordination issues, the effective implementation becoming harder. Clear and concise explanations. This is probably universal whenever businesses interact with governments. They're always looking for things to be simpler and easier to understand. The interesting thing here is that pro-business decisions improving. So even though people are less confident about the consultation with business and the engagement in business in drafting the rules and regulations, notwithstanding that, the government is in the end expected to make more pro-business decisions. And again, remember, this is before the omnibus law was promulgated. Okay, we go to the next slide. So this is the slide based on the situation as was when the survey was conducted, when there were two laws. So there was a omnibus law on job creation and one on tax. As we know, these have now been amalgamated into a single a law that has been passed by Parliament. You can see, as a rule, the overseas businesses were very excited about this. They saw that it was directly helpful. Very few disagreed. A few perhaps didn't know. We all know the law is very complicated at around about 1,000 pages, and maybe multinational businesses need some time to digest and have the provisions fully explained. But on the whole, the majority of the respondents felt that this was positive for their businesses. So that's was a great prospect at the time of the survey that has now been delivered by the current government. Okay, we go to the next slide. So this next slide was looking at the parts of the omnibus law that companies felt would be helpful to them. You can see that where businesses were hopeful that there would be developments that would help them to manage their businesses more easily. They were particularly looking for help around employment. They were looking for help around ease of doing business. Neither of these are particularly surprising areas. They're areas that have been raised before. There are probably areas that the Indonesian government would say that their omnibus law was looking to address. I think at this point, it'll be very interesting to see what happens next year, to see whether the investors feel that the omnibus law sort of gave them the results they were looking for from the government action. But very clear set of actions have taken place after the survey here. Okay, we go to the next slide. Next section just talks a little bit about digital. There are some changes here, as we all know, in the Indonesian economy. Everyone has switched it to greater or lesser degrees in using online services, I think, as a response to COVID. I was actually surprised when I was going through this that actually only 68% of companies expanded their digital offerings in the last few months, in the last year. I thought that number would be much higher than that. It's hard to think that there are still 32% of businesses that didn't need to expand their digital offering in the time of COVID. Perhaps some of them were already fully digitized and didn't need to change what they were doing. Perhaps, you know, they still assign 68%, still assign that digital is essential to doing businesses in Indonesia. Okay. Go to the next slide. So this was looking at the benefits that companies were seeing from digitalization. Most people, 83%, are feeling positive, a range of different benefits, but the ones that are perhaps most important, the two at the top there, relate to communication. So we all know the challenges of operating in Indonesia, 17,000 islands, 6 or 7 hours to fly from one end to the other. Using digital tools is a way of directly contacting possibly millions of people immediately and at a low cost. Businesses see the advantage of that clearly and immediately. The development of the digital infrastructure in Indonesia's been one of the true transforming factors of the 6 years that I've been working here. And I think Indonesia can continue to reap benefits from doing this as a way of sidestepping some of the sort of geographical issues of the diverse archipelago. Okay, we go to the next slide. Just coming now to the summary slide. So just a couple of points to make here. This is the roller coaster. I'm afraid, like a lot of roller coasters, it's sort of heading towards ground level as we come to the end of the ride. No real surprises. We all know COVID's a once in a century event. I don't think we should be too disheartened by this, but it has to be noted that at this point in time, the confidence of industry is lower than it's been in any of the other surveys that we have here. I'm hoping, though, that there'll be a very rapid rebound next year as the world gets a grip on COVID. I think this is a purely COVID-related dip in confidence. Okay, come to the next slide. Just to highlight the business outlook, it is more negative. It's heavily influenced by the external factors. E-commerce and digital continuing to make a large and positive impact on businesses in Indonesia. And in spite of these challenges, the really good news for Indonesia is more of the businesses than not are thinking of making investments in Indonesia in the near term. So deep down beneath those headline numbers, there's some really good news there. Indonesia's efforts to attract foreign businesses and to make this a good working environment for them should be paying off in terms of investment, in terms of increases in workforce. Factors affecting business, yeah, COVID and bureaucracy, the twin challenges that businesses face in 2020 in Indonesia. Anything that can be done to combat those two together will be much appreciated by the businesses that have taken part in the survey. Anything that can be done to improve the investment climate, the political climate, is always appreciated, and people looking, I think, particularly for stability there. In terms of government policy, and anything that can be done to improve sentiment, I think, appreciated. You can see there's some worries across the board. I think the Omnibus Law will have addressed at least some of those. Really want to find out what businesses are feeling now, having gone through the provisions of the Omnibus Law. People feel that they were looking for pro-business decisions. Has the Omnibus Law given them what they want? There is a lot of optimism in the survey around job creation. I think the prizes for the Indonesian government for improving business confidence and ease of doing business are well worth the effort. Okay, thank you very much. There's just one last slide that talks about the role of business chambers. This is the, if you like, the wrap-up question in the survey. So just wanted to highlight, is to say, larger response than we've had in previous years, and a very sort of positive set of numbers as well. You can see that nearly 2/3 of the participants have a very positive impact from the role that the business chambers play, and the other third have a neutral view. So the business chambers continue to have the confidence of the businesses that they represent, and it's their support and engagement that allows the chambers to represent them through conducting surveys like this. So thank you very much to all the members and all the feedback on behalf of both BritCham and EuroCham. Thank you very much. Cheers, Chris.
And what a wonderful positive note to conclude on, Nick. Thank you very much indeed. I know it was mentioned earlier, Ambassador Owen Jenkins will be needing to leave us very, very shortly. Thank you for staying on to hear Nick's presentation. I'm sure that we'll all be having more dialogue about some of the findings, Ambassador.
Thank you, Chris, and my apologies for having to leave at this point, but thank you to you and particularly to Nick for that fantastic presentation. It's really good to see. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, in the interest of expediency, I'd like to move straight to our panel. And first of all, apologies from James CastleAsia. James can't join us today at fairly short notice. He needed to prioritize something else. He is out of the country in Japan, and he does offer his warmest wishes and thanks to all those people that have cooperated with all the partners in the production of this particular index. So Jim Castle's warm wishes to everybody. But we do have Catharina Widjaja. For those of you who are not familiar with Catharina, she acts as chairwoman of the Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, better known as KADIN to most of us, for the UK and Ireland chapter. Catharina has also been a director of the PT Gajah Tunggul Group, which is largest integrated tire manufacturing company in Southeast Asia, and she's had that role since 2004. From a British perspective, we're delighted that she actually has 3 advanced qualifications from 3 different UK universities as well. Catharina, welcome. And Catharina is going to be joined by Corine, who we heard opening this particular event. Corine in her capacity as chair of EuroCham. Nick is going to stay on and complete the panel for us as well, probably as the person that's had the closest and longest look at the different slides that make up the presentation. But Catharina, I think first of all, I'd like to begin with you, if I may. It's fair to say that there are a number of contradictions throughout some of the outputs in those slides. And I'd like to ask whether you are in any way, a general question first of all, are you in any way surprised by the sentiments expressed by the respondents at this time?
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you very much, Nick, for the very in-depth survey presentations. Actually, to answer your question, Chris, it's somewhat not surprising with the feedback, the result of the survey, and especially for 2020. We are really indeed in such a situation that we are facing right now. It's somewhat expected. But in a way, it is actually giving some kind of a positive hope because in your survey presentation, Nick, you also put up that the investment mode, the going forward is still positive in a way. I mean, people not leaving. I mean, they actually still stay put, or in fact, actually expanding the investment into Indonesia. So that's to me is a positive kind of hope for the future. Although I know 2020 is tough and 2021 also is still uncertain. But with what I heard and I saw in the presentation is giving us some kind of hope. Thank you.
Catharina, I'm going to stay with you before I move to Corine, and Corine, I'll be asking really for your general reaction to the findings in the survey. But Catharina first, I mean, clearly the omnibus law and its implementation is underpinning an awful lot of aspiration. I mean, we're looking at 90% there or thereabouts agree or neutral with regard to all the range of impacts that the omnibus law may have. And of course, as we know, although it's intimated that implementation rules will be clear in the next couple of weeks, they're not at the moment. Do you think it's a little bit dangerous that the trajectory of the country is sort of in the hands of this one bill?
Not really, but Nick also pointed out in the survey that the expectations towards the government, I think our government is pretty weak in terms of the public relations and communicating, on this law. In fact, actually, I think really the law is going to give a easier investment mode going forwards. But you are right, we have to see the regulations that follows from this omnibus law, and that is going to take times. You know, the underlying after the loan, and you have to, you know, the regulation under that, and that is quite a challenge, and that's going to take a while until it's being implemented. But the law itself is actually should be taken as a positive, because it's really cut down a lot of the red tapes, and on the labor law, it's really putting us on the equal kind of status with our peers in the ASEAN. You know, now we can be more competitive in comparisons to our peers. So yes, it is a challenge. I mean, I think we have to, you know, sort of respect Pak Jokowi for taking this move. You know, I mean, it should have been done maybe before, but nobody wants, because this is not populist, right? But the president is willing to take the challenge and really doing it now. So it will take times, but it's for the positive. Thank you.
Okay, so long awaited work in progress, but with great optimism it's been received. Corine, could I please ask for your general overview, your general feelings as to the sentiments that are expressed within the International Business Confidence Index this year?
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Chris. I think first and foremost, it's great to have these insights again, and this index is so crucial for all of us as chambers, but also as companies to also know where we need to focus on when we have our dialogues with government and other stakeholders in Indonesia. I don't think it's a surprise that the sentiment is more negative than last year. I mean, as EuroCham, also collaborating with the other chambers, we've been working very closely over the last 7 months with all of our members. So we are very aware of the state of the businesses, and that most of our members have been struggling quite a bit. And all of them had to make pretty radical adaptations to their business models and ways of working to be able to protect their business, but also protect their people. So I think this is therefore not a surprise. What is, however, very positive and very encouraging is that most of the businesses that are present in Indonesia as part of our network are very confident about continuing to invest in this amazing country. So the opportunity is clearly there, but there's also clearly a call for support from the government to help and doing the ease of business and reducing complexity, in particular in the regular framework. And obviously the omnibus law seems to be a big, let's say the big answer to all of that. And I think we are all as companies and as chambers really looking forward to the implementing regulation to understand what it truly means and how this not only helps encourage new foreign investment, but also helps the businesses that already are here and have been here for a long time to continue to grow and invest. I think there's one topic that wasn't really coming out of the survey, but I think definitely deserves the attention, is that Indonesia has stepped up significantly in the last number of years in their ambition to reduce impacts of climate change, but also in terms of packaging, plastic waste, which is really encouraging. And also the conversations over the last number of months we've had around renewable energy. This is all really great, because for us as European companies, this is very important. I mean, for us, my company that I personally work for, Danone, One Planet, One Health is what we do and what we hope to invest even more so, in particular after COVID, the realization of people that the health of people is connected with the health of the planet, and that as businesses we are responsible to contribute to that. So there is a fear that in the current omnibus law, there are some shortcuts on the environmental piece. So I think as European businesses in our dialogues moving forward with the government, with this maybe being a good starting point and an opening, would be really important to emphasize the importance of development and investment in Indonesia should never come at the cost of sustainability, and that actually sustainability can help with the economical recovery and build a better Indonesia for the future generations to come.
Thank you very much, Corine. You introduced a very important point there, and the index has over the years taken the opportunity to introduce new topical issues, and perhaps the whole piece, as you put it, the issue of sustainability should be something that we should allocate some questions to in future surveys relating to business confidence. Thanks very much. Catharina, compliments of Corine there, mentioning that Indonesia has made significant improvements in many respects over the years, and it's all sort of come together with the omnibus law. I wonder whether we could talk in the context of your role with KADIN. To what extent is KADIN currently being an influencing party in respect to Republic of Indonesia government policy?
Okay, thank you. KADIN, under the chair of Rosan Roslani, as well as the vice chair, Ibu Shinta Kamdani, who also in charge for the international desk, they have been very active in working with the government. In fact, actually, Pak Rosan was involved in the Omnibus Law Task Force, as well Shinta now also involved in the COVID-19 task force as well as on the Omnibus Law. So President really, sort of like concerned with the investors and the, perspective on this. And that's why they bring KADIN along in every meetings to get the view and input on what the markets feel about this. Thank you.
And with respect to the issue of sustainability and the priority given to the environment, has KADIN in any way recalibrated its priorities in relation to these issues, Catharina?
Yes, I think we're very much aware of the UN SDG. And as you know, Shinta is very much involved also on the sustainable development goals. So we do, sort of like put a lot of efforts into that on this. And yes, Corine mentioned about the plastic. And I think, as you know, Pak Luhut also has a task force in terms of the plastic, reductions. And I think that shows that the government commitment into this environmental issue.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. And I know that the chambers, BritCham, EuroCham, the other bilateral chambers are looking forward to working ever more closely with KADIN in relation to the challenges of sustainability in the context of Indonesia. Corine, is there anything that you would like to see in particular the Indonesian government doing in terms of improving its emphasis on the environment?
Oh, sorry. I think what Catharina was saying is right. I mean, there are already many plans in place, and also over the last few years, we've seen significant improvement in terms of the regulation around, for example, renewable energy, solar panels, etc. Many of our members are very active. Like I said before, the European companies are leading in this space, also supported by the Green Deal from the EU. And they're also very happy to collaborate locally with the government and other stakeholders to discuss ways forward and to be an example for Indonesian business or any other nationality business to do the same. So if I would continue to ask that we've been asking the government since a long time is to continue the conversation and see how we can make the regulatory framework more conducive so that more companies will be encouraged to actually go on the path of growing and investing in Indonesia, but in a sustainable manner, so also healthy for the planet. So I think this BCI index, but also the conversations about recovery after COVID are a very good opportunity for us to connect with the different ministries and the different stakeholders, because COVID actually has accelerated some of the urgency around it and also has pushed us back in some areas as well. We know that in particular in the COVID period, many of the waste pickers, the pemulung in the country, have been having difficulties to doing their job, and they are basically the framework for collection in this country. So not only was there a big issue with additional waste, but also lack of income for this very important and vulnerable group. So there's a lot of good ideas, there's a lot of plans, and I think as EuroCham, but also together with BritCham and the other bilaterals, very happy to continue the conversation with the government and see how we can accelerate the journey of investment whilst also investing in sustainability.
I think we can do that, no? We can do some collaboration on that. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, there's an action point for us all. Thank you for that commitment, Catharina. Nick, I'm not ignoring you, but I know that in a couple of minutes you'll be doing a general wrap, so I'm just sidelining you if you don't mind. Catharina, I'd just like to draw our attention to one particular slide, which sort of the output represents a bit of a paradox. And it's the one where there seems to be disappointment or an expectation of less consultation, yet less consultation seems to be delivering better pro-business decisions. And I'm wondering whether that less expectation is in any way driven by discussions that are currently ongoing, we believe, in relation to GDPR. Certainly the international private sector at the moment hasn't been included in those conversations. Do you have any thoughts about that, Catharina?
I can't comment on that, but it is, you are right. It is quite an interesting number on that, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. That was a bit of a curveball thrown at you, and I apologize for that. Okay, I think just to say that we do have members of the media online with us. They're the Jakarta Post, Kontan, Media Indonesia, Reuters, among others. Time constraints have not really allowed us to take questions from the media, but you have all had a media release, and there are contact details there, and we can share questions with whomever you would like them to be addressed. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your interest in this Business Confidence Index. I think with that, for now, I'd just like to invite Nick Holder back to do a sort of wrap on what's been revealed and discussed over the last 45 minutes, Nick.
If I just unmute myself, that will help. So thanks very much, Chris. Thanks again to the panelists. Yeah, so this year's survey has that interesting paradox that people are feeling more miserable. They're reporting lower overall sentiment than ever before, but at the same time, the majority of them are looking to invest and to expand their workforces in Indonesia. I've talked a little bit about this in previous years. I think fundamentally the companies that are here in Indonesia, they know what it's like. They know how to work their way through sort of challenges and obstacles, and they know how to make sure that they can get things done that they want to, and they can get to the point where their business is thriving, growing, and employing more and more Indonesians. I think the real challenge for me is how does the Indonesian government get its message across to the businesses that are not here, that this is a great place to be, this is a great place to invest. We saw that there was a strong demand for simplified explanations, for explaining rules and regulations. We know that we have the Omnibus Law, which is expected to be a very significant change to the business environment in Indonesia. Is it going to be comprehensible? Is it going to be understandable to people who are not already here on the ground and have the time and resources to understand it? There was a point in the slides as well about SMEs and SMEs not perhaps feeling well represented or supported by the government. Maybe that reflects the fact that not many SMEs replied to the survey, but it's going to be the smaller companies that find it harder to come to Indonesia and harder to understand Indonesia. At what point will those sorts of companies decide that Indonesia is an exciting opportunity to explore and to enter when they're comparing themselves to other markets such as Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam in ASEAN, who are the competitors? That is the fundamental area of marketing Indonesia. Those of us who've been here are very happy to do it. We're very happy to help, but those who aren't here yet, they need to know more. Second point I just raise in the conclusion is a very interesting point about sustainability and development from both the panelists. Sustainability was something that was not really on the agenda when I first came to Indonesia 5-6 years ago. It's now very much at the forefront of everyone's thinking. I think that's tremendously positive for the country, and also because it's such a large and significant economy as well, and a developing economy still. I think that's tremendously positive for the whole planet as well, that Indonesia takes it seriously and is willing to talk about it and to take steps to improve it. So I hope that's a trend, and maybe we can add some more questions on that to the survey in future years, Chris. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, and that would be my summary, Chris.
Thank you very much, Nick. Waiting in the wings is Ambassador Vincent Pickett, European Union Ambassador to Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam. He wasn't in Indonesia when we did the last Business Confidence Index, so this is the first time that he will have seen this piece of work, and also seen the way that together we present it to business and other stakeholders. And I'd like to ask Ambassador Vincent now to please come to the screen and to offer your own thoughts in response to what you've seen and what you've heard, and to address this particular audience, which is predominantly an audience of BritCham, EuroCham stakeholders, together with the EIBN and CastleAsia. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Chris, in the first place, for giving me the floor and at this seminar about the Business Confidence Index. Indeed, the first time for me. Been in Indonesia now for a year and a bit, so I found my feet, so to say, until, of course, everything changed. And at the when the COVID pandemic struck Indonesia, as well as all other parts in the world. Very good to see that this is a co-production, this webinar, between BritCham and EuroCham, besides other partners. And it goes to show that the EU and UK have different identities, and we interact in different ways. We are, of course, negotiating partners on the Brexit negotiations. We are and probably will be also business competitors in Europe and outside. But at the end of the day, this seminar shows, and the cooperation of BritCham in EuroCham shows, that we have an awful lot of commonality in terms of interests and priorities if it comes to promoting a positive business climate for everybody, and that is, of course, the foreign business players as well as the local business players. I think that's very great to see. 2020 was very much of course, a horrible year in many respects, with all the deaths and the suffering that the pandemic has caused. It's a year where we have seen tremendous impact on public policy as a result of the pandemic in Europe, in the UK, and in Indonesia. The year started, of course, with a very new cabinet under President Jokowi. Its policy agenda was heavily disrupted by the pandemic. New priorities arose for evident reasons, but still, and that is one major observation I would like to make, the President and his cabinet got the omnibus law approved just a couple of weeks ago, and it came into force even on the 2nd of November, if I'm yes, on the 2nd of November. So that is and was all along a flagship piece of work for the President, and he has pulled it off. From the EU side, we are very hopeful that now that it is adopted, the further work will happen swiftly, and the adoption in a very consistent manner with the spirit of the law and with the option of the implementing regulations, of which there are many, and it is clearly something that all of us have an interest in following very closely in order to make sure that the openings and the positive simplification that the omnibus law promises is now pulled through in the detail in the various sectors. The EU is on its side, of course, very keen to match or parallel this drive towards simplification and for opening up of the economy through the negotiation of our future comprehensive economic partnership agreement. It will cover investment rules. It will cover trade rules in all trade in all respects, the goods and the services. And we hope that our negotiations can benefit from the omnibus law in the sense that some of the things that earlier we thought we would have to negotiate may have been solved in the meantime, and hence we might be able to proceed more swiftly. There will still be some road to go for us in these talks. It is detailed, and there is a lot of work, and a number of the big trade questions of Indonesia, of course, need some answering still as a result of the structure of the economy and the historical trade policy of this country. So we look forward with very good spirits, with very good drive to make this go. We hope that the smaller stumbling blocks that we have encountered on our road will be solved quickly so that we can strike a deal. And once we have that deal, then we are convinced that the future SEPA can help boost the economic recovery of Indonesia. It can contribute to that effort by boosting the business sector, private sector in particular, and by helping to create jobs and generate income for the people. We have done these studies, impact studies, that show this very clearly, that the future SEPA will create a good 350,000 extra jobs in textile, leather, and footwear alone. It will generate more GDP, rising slowly from an extra 2.8 billion euros in a year to once the to 5.2 billion euros extra GDP once the SEPA agreement is in full swing by the early 2030s. So that is massive money, and is certainly something that will help Indonesia along its target to be a high-income country by the year 2045. Fundamental, of course, remains getting COVID under control. That is true for Indonesia, both from the pandemic side and from the economic side. The government has been working very hard on mounting an economic package that is quite impressive. Implementation is a task, evidently, but there is indication that some of the economic blows have been softened as a result of the government action. The EU is doing the same. Just yesterday, you may have read, there was a final political agreement on the EU's 1.8 trillion euros financial package for the years 2021 to 2027. 1.8 trillion euros, a figure that doesn't fit on my my mobile phone calculator, and I have no clue to how to translate it in rupiahs either. But it's a massive amount of money that, of course, has to be combined with the spending that will be done at the level of the individual member states. So we hope that we can strengthen Europe's recovery through a green recovery, and thereby also stay a very strong and stable market for Indonesia. Vaccines, of course, that is the big hope. And good news just 2 days ago with a promising vaccine by Pfizer, the US firm, and its partner, a German partner, BioNTech, from central Germany, with a support from a loan from the European Investment Bank, seem to have developed a vaccine that might offer solace to us all, because that's the bottom line, of course, for economic recovery, for sustainable economic growth to return to us, including Indonesia. We need to have a vaccine to weed out the pandemic as soon as possible. I stop there by saying that we remain very positive about Indonesia's growth, echoing the sentiment that was also voiced in your business confidence index. We remain convinced of the vitality of this country, of its economy, of its human resources. Work needs to be done, that is clear, but it can be done. And in other words, the EU and the UK will be partners in a fantastic growth story of Indonesia for the coming decades to come. Thanks very much indeed, once again, for the invitation.
Thank you very much for joining us, Ambassador Vincent Pickett, your first International Business Confidence Index. Of course, expressing concern over the nature of the year that we've had, but overriding that is a general optimism that all geographical European business can participate in a brighter future of Indonesia, and in particular, underlining the overwhelming unanimous approval and recognition of the enormous efforts of the President and his government in getting the Omnibus Law passed, a game changer in business confidence and ease of doing business and market access for many, many businesses in many countries around the world. With that, I would like to restate our extreme appreciation to our sponsors today, Altilium, BNP Paribas, BUPA, Danone, HSBC, Inke Maris Associates, Ipsotek, Mandate Executive Search, Prudential Life Assurance, Steinberg Protocol, TMF Group. I'd like to thank the interest of media, Jakarta Post, Kontan Media Indonesia, and Reuters. To all of you, this has been recorded, and a recording will be released, and I'm sure posted on all chambers' websites. And please do, as Nick suggested, help everybody get the message out there that Indonesia has very, very bright prospects for the future in business. So this has been the International Business Confidence Index 2020. Catharina, thank you for joining this panel. We really appreciate your insights, and clearly there is a willingness and a commitment for all chambers to be working with you in your KADIN role. We will follow up on, in particular, on the environmental and sustainable issues that were raised by Corine and endorsed by Nick, and I'm sure we can make better progress together. To all of you for joining us, It's been a pleasure for me representing BritCham Indonesia in partnership with EuroCham, represented by the chair, Corine Tapp. Thank you, Corine. BritCham represented by Nick Holder. Thank you, Nick. To our ambassador that has also just gone, HMA Owen Jenkins, and to everybody, in particular to Nielsen, the 4th year of professional cooperation in the production of this piece of work. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. We wish you, if you're over in the EU, UK, we wish you a great rest of your day in this middle of the week. If you're in Southeast Asia, then it's perhaps approaching that time of the day when you can have a little rest and a little relax. Thank you for joining us.